Another question I get asked quite often is, what is a culture of innovation? And you know, people look at me like, well, it's like any culture, but it's one that's based upon innovation. And you say, well, that doesn't make, that's a circular argument. Well, the bottom line, what happens during the war on waste is people get really good at finding interesting ideas that can have just profound influence on the future of a company. I mean, they come up with great ideas, and when you listen to the ideas coming out of people, man, they just are awesome. And so, what happens when people get working on a project during the war on waste, they start to not just look at the little problem they're working on, but rather they start to look at other issues of a bigger picture, and we call those the big, the big deals or the big ideas. These are the things that are just, awesome perspective on a problem that exists in the company. A good example is one. Um, the After a couple of days of the class, one client employee came up to me and said, "Hey, I have this may be a good chance for me to do this, but I have a way that we can cut costs in manufacturing a particular chemical that we a process that we have by a factor of 4. And I think, if we do that, we'll be able to capture significant market share in the particular field that we're in." And so he came to me and he said, "I can get a prototype done by the time we want to do the presentations in 4 weeks." And I said, "Great. How much is it going to cost?" And he said, "Well, it isn't $2,000. He said, "I've got a particular piece of equipment that I can buy for $3,400 or thereabouts. I can't remember exactly, but it was something like $3,400. But it'll allow us to, you know, probably increase our sales dramatically." And so I went to the president and he said, "But I don't want the founder involved because it'll just bog down with him, eh, you know, because it wasn't his idea and all that stuff." And I said, "Can we figure out a way to do it?" Well, I went to the president, and the president was a young guy just gotten out of Harvard Business School, and he'd come. He said, "Well, sure, let's." And he said, "Why didn't you ask the CEO?" And I said, "Well," and he goes, "Oh, okay, I know." He didn't even flinch when I mentioned that the concern the particular researcher had. So we created a stealth lab in the back of the facility, special locks on it to make sure no one snuck in there when we weren't there. And these guys, during the hour they had for 4 days in the week, they spent the time in the class using the employees that were on his team. He had 4 other guys with him, and he had them running around finding pieces of equipment that they needed to get the equipment working. And they got a prototype up in 4 weeks. And so when we did the War on Waste presentations, the way we do that is, if it's an 8-week class, on Monday of the 5th week, we do a presentation where we tell the CEO what projects we're working on, and we work through the process of identify the problem, come up with its root cause, why it's a problem, come up with a cost out, how big of a problem it is. If it's a sales issue, you talk about what lost sales you're having as a result of it. If it's process, you just sort of talk about lost output and whatever. So you've got ways of quantifying the waste. Then the next step is you come up with a solution and try to cost out the solution to make sure it's less than $2,000. So if you've got an elephant on your hands, you take a bite out of the elephant and see how big. You spend $2,000, not $100,000, and see where you end up. And it's amazing what you do when you put that constraint on people. They can't spend a lot of money, so they have to. Well, so let's take a bite out of it and see where we end up. And then you have to come up with the metrics to tell you how you're doing on the project, and then an implementation plan. So this group was doing that, and the CEO, after he'd heard it, he goes, "God, that's great. He said, how come you didn't tell me about that? And he says, asked and answered. So he laughed at it. He says, and why he didn't get involved, because, you know, he would probably, we had a laugh about that. But anyway, he understood. By the way, if you want to find out more about any of these topics, you can go to our website at www.waronwasteacademy.com and find out more about these issues. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you on the other side. Thanks very much.